The slave was supposed to meet death, but it changed everything, turning the verdict into the beginning of forbidden love. The day that was meant to end in death. The morning felt unnaturally heavy, as if the earth itself sensed what was about to happen and pressed its weight into every breath, every movement, every silent glance exchanged between those who had gathered. The air was thick, unmoving, carrying a quiet tension that clung to the skin. In the courtyard of the estate, a wooden platform had already been erected, rough and unpolished, its purpose clear to all who looked upon it. Around it stood a crowd, men, women, even children, drawn not by compassion, but by curiosity, by the dark pull of witnessing the end of another man's life. Some whispered among themselves, others stared in silence, but none stepped forward to question what was about to happen. On that platform stood Samuel. He was young, far too young for the weight of chains that bound his wrists, for the wounds that marked his body, for the fate that had been decided for him without mercy. His clothes were torn, his skin bruised and bloodied, yet there was something in his posture that refused to yield. He did not beg. He did not lower his gaze. His eyes remained steady, clear, almost unsettling in their calmness. There was something strange about him, something that could not be restrained by rope or fear, as if, even now, standing on the edge of death, he remained free in a way no one there could understand. A murmur passed through the crowd, quickly silenced when the master stepped forward. Mr. Richards stood with cold authority, his presence enough to command obedience without effort. His expression did not change as he looked at Samuel, as though he were nothing more than a problem to be erased. "Begin," he ordered, his voice sharp, final, leaving no room for hesitation. And in that moment, everything could have ended. The story could have stopped there, swallowed by the inevitability of death. But it did not. From above, cutting through the stillness like a blade, came a voice. "Wait." All heads turned. The sound had come from the balcony of the house overlooking the courtyard, a place removed from the dirt and the cruelty below. There stood Eleonora. She was not meant to interfere. This was not her place, not her decision to make. Yet something had drawn her forward, something in Samuel's face, in the quiet strength of his gaze, in the way he stood without fear before the end. She had seen many things in that house, heard many orders given and carried out without question. But this she could not ignore. "Stop this," she said as she began to descend the stairs, her voice steady despite the tension that now rippled through the crowd. Mr. Richards turned toward her, his expression tightening, though his tone remained cold. He broke the order. His words were simple, dismissive, as though they explained everything, as though they justified what was about to happen. Eleonora paused only for a moment, her eyes shifting briefly toward Samuel before returning to her husband. "He wanted to live," she replied quietly. The words hung in the air, fragile yet undeniable. For a long moment, no one spoke. The courtyard seemed to hold its breath, caught between command and defiance, between what was expected and what might still change. Then, at last, the silence was broken. "Take him away." The order was given, reluctant yet decisive. The ropes were not loosened gently, nor were the guards kind as they pulled Samuel from the platform, but he was no longer standing where death had been waiting for him. The crowd stirred, disappointment and confusion mixing in their voices as the spectacle was taken from them. The platform remained, empty now, a silent witness to what had almost been. Death had been postponed. But fate had not. The night that changed everything. That night, Eleonora could not sleep. No matter how tightly she closed her eyes or how desperately she tried to quiet her thoughts, his gaze would not leave her. It lingered in her mind with an intensity that made rest impossible, as if it had carved itself into her memory and refused to fade. She did not understand what it meant or why it affected her so deeply. Whether it was pity that stirred within her, or fear of what she had witnessed, or something far more dangerous and unfamiliar. Something that reached beyond reason and settled somewhere deeper inside her chest. Something she had no name for and no defense against. And yet, despite her confusion, or perhaps because of it, she found herself rising from her bed in the silence of the night. She was drawn by a force she could neither explain nor resist. Her steps were quiet as she moved through the darkened corridors of the estate. Every shadow seemed to watch her. Every sound was amplified in the stillness. At last, she reached the old barn where he had been taken. It was a place forgotten and hidden, far from the eyes of the house. The air there was thick with the scent of wood and dust, and something else, something human, something wounded. When she stepped inside, her heart was beating faster than she wanted to admit. Yet she did not turn back. She could not. There he was. Samuel sat in the dim light. His figure was marked by exhaustion, but not broken by it. When he looked at her, he did not seem surprised. It was as though he had expected her. Or perhaps as though nothing in this world could surprise him anymore. His eyes were steady, searching her face with quiet intensity. After a moment, he spoke. His voice was low but clear. "Why did you come?" The question hung between them. She hesitated. Not because she wanted to hide the truth, but because she did not have one. Not a clear one. Not something she could shape into words that would make sense even to herself. So she answered simply, honestly, "I don't know." It was the only answer she could give. The only one that felt real. And strangely, it was enough. She stayed. At first, she told herself it was only to help him. To bring water. To tend to the wounds that had been left untreated. To ease the pain she had seen on his body. Her hands were careful, but unsure as she worked. She was aware of the boundary she was crossing, yet unable to step back from it. Then she stayed to speak. Their conversations were quiet and hesitant at first. Like two people standing at the edge of something unknown, unsure whether to move forward or retreat. But slowly, the distance between them began to shrink. Word by word. Night by night. Until the silence no longer felt heavy, but shared. She found herself returning again and again. No longer needing a reason she could justify. No longer pretending it was only duty or compassion that brought her there. Because it had become something else entirely. Something she could not deny, even if she tried. Something that grew between them in the space where fear and loneliness once lived. Something that could not be easily explained or named. In those hidden hours, he told her about freedom. Not as an idea, but as something real and vital. Something he carried within himself, despite everything that had been taken from him. She listened as if hearing about another world. A world she had never known. And in return, she spoke of her own emptiness. Of the quiet void that had existed in her life long before that morning in the courtyard. A life that looked whole from the outside, but felt hollow within. Somehow, in the exchange of these truths, they began to understand each other. In a way that neither of them had expected. In a way that made the world beyond the barn feel distant and irrelevant. Then one night, without planning, without words to mark the moment, their hands met. And they did not pull away. The contact was simple, yet charged with everything they had not said. Everything they had come to feel. From that moment on, the last boundaries that had separated them began to disappear. Quietly. Inevitably. As if they had never truly existed at all. When the world learns the truth. Secrets do not live long, no matter how carefully they are hidden or how desperately someone tries to protect them. At first, it was only a whisper. A quiet suspicion passed from one servant to another, carried in lowered voices and cautious glances. No one dared to speak openly, but everyone began to notice small things. The way Eleonora disappeared at night. The way Samuel no longer seemed entirely alone, even in silence. The rumors crept slowly, like shadows stretching across the walls at dusk. They grew stronger with each passing day. What had once been uncertain began to take shape. People started to look differently. Their eyes lingered longer than before. Their expressions became sharper, more observant, filled with unspoken questions. The air in the estate changed. It became heavier, charged with tension that no one could ignore. Even silence began to feel dangerous. Eleonora could feel it. Every step she took seemed watched. Every movement noticed. Samuel felt it too. Though he said little, he understood that something had shifted. The fragile barrier that had protected them was beginning to crack. And once it broke, there would be no way to restore it. It was only a matter of time before the truth reached the one man who held power over all of them. And when it did, nothing could stop what followed. The truth reached the master. Mr. Richards did not need proof. The whispers were enough. The pattern was enough. And perhaps, deep down, he had already sensed it. His reaction was not loud at first. It was cold. Controlled. But beneath the control was something far more dangerous. His anger was inevitable. It rose slowly, like a storm gathering strength before it breaks. Not sudden, but certain. Not chaotic, but precise. When he finally spoke, his voice carried no hesitation. "He will be executed at dawn," he said. The words were simple. Final. There was no room for argument. No space for mercy. This time, there would be no interruption. No voice to stop what had already been decided. The order spread quickly. Faster than the rumors that had created it. Everyone knew. By nightfall, the entire estate was filled with the knowledge of what would happen at sunrise. The atmosphere changed once again. This time, it was not tension, but inevitability. A quiet, suffocating certainty. Some avoided looking at Eleonora. Others watched her more openly now, no longer hiding their awareness. But no one spoke to her. No one stepped forward. She stood alone in a world that had suddenly turned against her. And Samuel, he remained where he was. Waiting. Not pleading. Not resisting. As if he had already accepted what was coming. Or perhaps as if he understood something no one else did. The night before the execution felt endless. Time moved slowly, heavily, as though even it resisted what the morning would bring. Every sound seemed louder. Every silence deeper. And yet, beneath the fear, beneath the certainty of an ending, there was something else. Something unspoken. Because an end is not always just an end. Sometimes it is a turning point. Sometimes it is the moment when everything changes. Dawn was coming. The final moment was near. There would be no second chance. No escape. No mercy. This was the end. Or perhaps, it was only the beginning. A sleepless night. The house sank into silence as the night deepened, as if every wall and corridor had agreed to hold its breath until morning. The servants had long since retreated to their quarters. The lights were dim, and the echoes of the day had faded into stillness. Outside, even the wind seemed to move more quietly, touching the windows and without a sound. But within that silence, Eleonora could not find rest. She lay in her bed with her eyes open, staring into the darkness, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on her chest. Sleep would not come. It refused her completely. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him. His face appeared clearly, as if he were standing right before her. His gaze followed her thoughts, steady and unshaken. It was not filled with fear. Not with desperation. Not with a plea for mercy. There was something else in it. Something that unsettled her more than fear ever could. Freedom. The memory of it would not let her go. It moved through her mind again and again, stronger each time, pushing aside everything else. She turned from one side to the other, trying to escape it, trying to silence the growing storm inside her. But it only grew louder. Her thoughts refused to rest. Her heart refused to slow. The silence around her only made it worse. It gave space for every feeling, every doubt, every realization she had tried to ignore. She understood what awaited him at dawn. There was no illusion left. No hope she could hold on to. And yet something inside her resisted that reality with quiet but unyielding force. She could not accept it. Not completely. Not after everything that had passed between them. Not after what she had seen in his eyes. Minutes passed. Or perhaps hours. Time had lost its meaning in the darkness. The night stretched endlessly, refusing to move forward, as if it too was caught between what had been decided and what had not yet happened. Eleonora finally sat up. The movement was slow, almost hesitant, as though even her body questioned what she was about to do. She remained still for a moment, listening to the silence, as if expecting something to stop her. But nothing did. The house remained quiet. Unaware. Or perhaps unwilling to interfere. She stood. Her bare feet touched the cold floor, sending a faint shiver through her body. Still, she did not turn back. Step by step, she moved toward the door. Each felt heavier than the last, filled with doubt, with fear, with the knowledge that once she crossed that threshold, nothing would remain the same. She reached the door and stopped. Her hand hovered near the handle, but she did not touch it yet. She stood there for a long time. Listening. Thinking. Fighting with herself in silence. The world on the other side of that door felt distant and unknown, yet closer than ever before. It was not just a door. It was a choice. A point from which there would be no return. Her heart beat louder now, echoing in the quiet room. She could feel it in every part of her body. For a moment, it seemed as if she might step away. As if she might turn back, return to her bed, and let the night pass as it was meant to. But she did not. Slowly, with a quiet resolve that surprised even her, she reached out and touched the handle. Her fingers trembled slightly, but they did not pull away. She took a breath. Then another. And finally, she opened the door. Where fear ends. At dawn, everything was ready, as if the world itself had aligned with the decision that had been made the night before. The sky was pale, touched by the first light of morning, and the air carried a sharp chill that made every breath feel clearer, harsher. In the courtyard, the platform stood once again, silent and unmoving, waiting to fulfill its purpose. The ropes were prepared. The guards were in place. Nothing had been left to chance. One by one, people began to gather. The crowd formed quickly, drawn by curiosity and the promise of witnessing something final. Their voices were low, restrained, yet filled with anticipation. Some spoke in whispers. Others simply watched, their eyes fixed on the empty platform. It all felt familiar. Predictable. Inevitable. But something was wrong. At first, no one noticed. The absence was too small, too quiet to be understood. The crowd shifted, growing restless as the moments passed. The guards exchanged glances. Time moved forward, yet the expected figure did not appear. Samuel was not there. The realization came slowly, like a ripple spreading through still water. It passed from one person to another, unspoken but undeniable. Where was he? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Then another absence became clear. Eleonora was not there either. The space she should have occupied remained empty, untouched. Now the silence changed. It was no longer calm or expectant. It was sharp, uneasy, filled with a rising tension that no one could ignore. The order had been given. The moment had come. And yet the two at the center of it all were gone. Confusion spread quickly. Voices grew louder. The careful control that had defined the morning began to break apart. Guards were sent to search. Doors were opened. Rooms were checked. But there was nothing. No sign of struggle. No trace of resistance. Only absence. And then, beyond the walls of the estate, someone found it. Footprints. Faint, but clear enough to follow. They led away from the house, away from the courtyard, away from everything that had once defined their lives. They led toward the forest. The news returned quickly, carried with urgency and disbelief. For a moment, no one spoke. The meaning of it settled slowly, heavily, into every mind. They had escaped. Not by force. Not in chaos. But in silence. In choice. In defiance of everything that had been decided for them. The forest stood in the distance, dark and vast, its shadows hiding whatever path lay within. It was unknown. It was dangerous. But it was theirs. Somewhere beneath those trees, two figures moved forward, leaving behind the world that had tried to bind them. For the first time, there were no chains. No commands. No roles forced upon them. They did not walk as master and slave. Those identities had been left behind with the estate, with the platform, with the life that no longer held them. Now, they walked side by side. Not by permission, but by truth. By choice. By something stronger than fear. The past still existed. It could not be erased. But it no longer controlled their steps. Each movement carried them further away from it. Further into uncertainty. Further into freedom. And though the path ahead was unclear, though danger could wait behind any shadow, there was something undeniable in the way they moved forward. They were no longer defined by what they had escaped. They were something else entirely. Two people. Walking into a world that had never belonged to them before. Free.